All right, show recording begins right now. Hi, everyone, and welcome to eLearnChat, where talk, it's knowledge. And today we are joined by our special co-host. She's doing us a big favor. Dawn is at ICE and couldn't be on the show today, but Lisa Goldstein. Hey, how are you?
Great. It's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So you go from being in the hot seat to being the hot seat.
Right.
So how have you been?
I've been great. It's definitely staying super busy.
Oh, that's good. And busy is good.
Yes.
The days go fast when you're busy.
Absolutely.
Well, and another person joining us today, I think this is his third or fourth time on the show. One of my favorite people, good person. And actually, it's interesting, in the pre-show, I didn't realize Bill had moved. And now, Lisa, you guys have, he's one of your neighbors now, which is kind of neat.
Yeah, it's so funny how that happens when we start talking about, where are you from? Where are you from? No, you're so close to me.
I
We're
live
only
right
15
around the
minutes
block
away.
from you. Yeah. Anyway, Bill Cushard. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hey, I'm great. Couldn't be better. It's good to be with you guys.
That's great. Glad you can make it again. And congratulations. You're now living near Denver, which is in Colorado.
Yes, Mile High City. If I start to breathe hard, just don't worry. It's just the altitude. I'll
just
recover.
Oxygen. Yep, that's fine. The mask will come right down. You'll be fine.
That's right.
Yeah. I remember once I was in Utah. I think it was one of the first trips I took over there, and it was a 2-week trip. I was doing 2 weeks of steady training, teaching a company, and the first week I'm sitting in the hotel room going, "Why am I palpitating? Why am I sweating? What is going on?" I was getting a little bit of altitude sickness.
Yep.
Yeah.
Never had it before.
It takes a few days to adjust.
Yeah, within about 2 days I was fine, but it was eerie. And I guess you don't really notice the lack of oxygen or the thinner oxygen until you're actually living in it.
Right. You have to. Your body has to work harder, and that's why athletes come to train here.
Oh, I know. They go. What is it? The Olympics team goes to Colorado Springs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And that's 7,000. I think that's even higher than where you guys are at.
A little higher, I think. That's right.
Yeah, 7's pretty rarefied. By about 10,000, you don't even know who you are anymore, but that's okay.
I was just at 12,000 feet on Tuesday last week. I took my daughter skiing here at Arapahoe Basin, and I think the base is at 9,000 or 10,000 feet at the base, and it goes up to 12 at the top.
Wow.
So that's pretty high altitude.
It is. Yeah,
and Bill, you're a runner, so do you run the peaks?
No, but I do run the trails west of Denver. I think it's Jefferson County. There's a lot of trails, so some days I might do a trail that goes up to 7,500 feet with like a 1,000-foot climb, running up the hill. So a little bit, but every once in a while I'll drive up to Frisco and run around the lake up there. It's Lake Dillon. That's 9,000 feet.
Wow.
But it's flat. It's just a bike trail around the lake, and so I do that every couple of months.
That's pretty good. Now, at what point do you need oxygen? Is that like 15 or 20,000?
I think 20 or above. I know most people they hike that Kilimanjaro,
Right.
which is 19,500.
And you don't
something.
need oxygen, I think.
I don't think you do there.
No.
I think
In
most
fact,
people do
who's doing Kilimanjaro? Your neighbor.
Who?
Gina Schreck. In
Wow.
I think August or September, she's going to Kilimanjaro. She's turning 50, and that's her anniversary present to herself.
Oh.
That's cool.
So she's going to do Kilimanjaro. That sounds like I'd rent a video personally, but
Yeah. I read a book on that. The author described it as as you make the summit attempt,
yeah.
it feels like a New Year's Eve caliber hangover for 2 days.
Huh. Yeah, and it's a 6-day march up the mountain. It's not a climb. It's really more of a long hike.
Yeah.
But still, 6 straight days to get up to about, I think it's 20,000 or 20-something plus thousand feet.
I think that's right.
That's pretty amazing. And the snow up there. Yeah, a lot of people
All year
think,
round, I think.
It's in Africa. There can't be any snow. No, there's a little bit of snow up there already.
They have ski resorts in Morocco.
No, that I didn't know.
It's hard to believe.
I'm trying to remember. What mountains are near Morocco?
What are they called?
Because it's pretty flat all through that area. I mean, Morocco's kind of at the edge of of the Sahara. And it's interesting. I just didn't think there were any mountains there.
Yeah,
When I
that's
was
all
on the
mountains.
Canary Islands, I experienced one of the weirdest things in my life, and that was a sandstorm.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
And
I've
they
never
happen
experienced it.
every, I guess, at least once or twice a year. They get them, and they said everybody indoors. Sand's coming, and for about 2 to 3 hours, all you see is dark brown and black. Everything is covered, and then it's gone, and there's sand everywhere. It's the weirdest kind of storm I've ever been in
Amazing.
my life. But anyway, let's talk about you, Bill. What have you been up
Cool.
to? Now you're going for your doctorate right now, correct?
I am. I'm currently working on my dissertation. So I've finished all my coursework, and I have my dissertation proposal approved. And so now I'm in the phase where I'm about to start conducting the research. So my topic is social learning in the workplace.
Okay.
And essentially what I'm going to study is the relationship between social learning and sales performance, right? So there's very little in research that shows any link to performance. Everyone talks about social learning. Yes, it helps us learn. Yes, it's the way we learn. But there's almost nothing that I can find that says, okay, people engaged in social learning and now they did their job better. And this is how we know they did their job better. And so that's the question I'm trying to answer.
Well, that actually sounds like it would make sense because salespeople are social by nature, and everything they do tends to be social. The people they work with have to like them. The people they sell to have to really like them. And they constantly are learning new things, whether it's new products, new techniques, methodology. So that kind of makes sense. And yet you're right, it probably hasn't been talked about very much.
Yeah, and I think in sales there's also a trend of team selling,
Yes.
right? Sure, there's still the lone wolves, the guy out in the field that can't be bothered to talk to you because you're not a prospect, right? But I think there's a lot more inside sales being done, and it's a lot more collaborative, right? How did you help your client? I want to learn from what you did to close that deal so I can do it in my region, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot more of that nowadays. And so I think the timing is right, to take advantage of this, to test it. So right now I'm looking for an organization in which to conduct my study. So a company to say, okay, Bill, come in and do your research because we could benefit from it. So that's what I'm working on now.
Hey, talk to Dell. The reason I say that is we talked to them a couple of weeks ago. We're getting some new NAS servers and some other stuff, and we first talked to the sales rep. She immediately brought in some experts in their configuration area. She then brought in some experts in their security area. So before we know it, we had 3-4 people on the phone, all working collaboratively to solve what our needs were.
Cool.
And that was really neat because it was instant. Within 5 minutes, she had 2 or 3 other people. And you could tell that she was the coordinator. She made sure that everybody who needed to be there was there. And
Right.
no, it's not a commercial for Dell, by the way. But I thought they did a really good job because it was very quick to get people, and
Sure.
they were very quick to get proposals. So that's, again, like you were just saying, it's that collaborative sales environment. And they're training for that. They've got to be doing a lot of training so they know who to call,
Yep.
how to get people together, and what kind of questions to ask.
Yeah, in the old days of sales, those other people wouldn't have helped because I'm not going to help you get a deal so that you can make a commission. What's in it for me?
Right.
I have to work on my own deals.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of how it was. And I think that model is changing.
Yeah.
So, Bill, do you think that any of the particular social media tools and technologies that are available now are more conducive to this, performance, learning experiences that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked because the how I intend to design the intervention, right? People talk about social learning and they say, oh, you can go on Twitter and ask a question. Well, that doesn't work in a company. But enterprise social networks. I mean, I'm going to put together an intervention, a group on an enterprise like Yammer, like Tibber, or Moxie Software, for example, or NewsGator, and put people in groups as part of their onboarding. right? So I will be using an enterprise social network, and that's kind of a side part of my dissertation, is how does technology help enable this? Especially, if I'm doing a study on a sales team that might be dispersed all over the place. There might be an inside sales team in San Francisco, and then you have field salespeople out all over the country who are collaborating with each other, and so they need a mechanism for communicating and sharing resources and posting links and asking questions and all this. So I will certainly be using that technology, enterprise social networks.
Now, have either of you found that Twitter, for example, while helpful, is only helpful at a certain level? I noticed a couple of times I've asked questions that may be a little too technical or a little, and nothing, no responses back. I noticed, at least just from loose observation, that the largest amounts of responses people get are for simpler things or quick referrals versus take it offline and we'll give you a more detailed explanation. Have you guys noticed any of that?
Yeah, and I think I'd also add to that to say, another factor is that Twitter seems to be changing how it releases information. It seems like it's only releasing, data from, recently, right? I think it's like in the last 48 hours if you search a hashtag. So if you're looking for conversations that's happening around a certain topic, isn't that true, Bill? Is that that Twitter's starting to do that, and there's some frustration because it's also changing some API things, so you can't search things as much on TweetChat and things like that.
I haven't heard about that cutoff for time.
No, but now that you mention it,
it makes sense.
And now that you mention it, I've been trying to go back and find conversations I had just like a week ago. I can't find them. So okay, you know what? They probably can't handle the load.
Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of people on Twitter. I forgot how many are on now, but they said it's growing and there's a lot of people, and you're right, they're messing with the API with everybody. And they're getting rid of things like TweetChat. I think it's imminent. It's going away.
It's only because they're changing or they're tightening some of their controls, which disallow that technology of TweetChat to read the information because they're changing that API. But it's interesting that, if they are not capable of handling so much data, it provides opportunity for companies like TweetChat or, OneCube with their SmartStream, other companies to, lend a hand with their technologies and provide a way to pull the data if Twitter can't. But they seem to be locking it down where other technologies can't access it.
Well, I always wonder if Twitter's going to get acquired by somebody like Facebook and then just go away. You never know.
Yeah,
that's tough. Their valuation is so high.
Is it really?
Yeah, I mean it's in the billions. I mean they're raising money at very high valuation. Well, who knows? I mean, someone must have $42 billion cash sitting around.
There's a couple of people running around like that. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's where Twitter falls down because if I'm a salesperson, I'm looking for expertise. I've just been given some objections from a prospect. Right? No, your solution's not right for me because of whatever reason. You want to go to, your peers and find out perhaps if others have come across that same type of conversation and what they did about it, right? And you can learn from your peers and say, oh, you tried this? Okay, I'm going to try that too, and call back, your client. So, you can't do that on Twitter. You're talking about proprietary, company sales processes and products and things. So, what these enterprise social networks are doing is, closing that off so employees can talk with each other and find each other and collaborate with each other. It's just right for doing that. And mostly today, what these enterprise social networks are selling is improved communication and collaborating on work documents, right? They're trying to start selling sales enablement. You can use this tool to enable your sales team by posting resources, right? By having conversations, by putting links to training materials or product specs. And so when I go around to these enterprise social networks to talk to them about my research, they're interested because they also want to sell that use case of sales enablement.
Now, I notice a lot of corporations use things like Same Time. It's not quite the same, but they're using the typical messaging internally to get information and answers, whereas before they used to have to try to make phone calls. They could never get anybody, or people were out, or nobody's answering their phone. they can almost always find who's online and get an answer for what they want, which is kind of neat. And that's why I keep saying a lot of people think that companies should open themselves totally up to Twitter or Facebook. I don't agree. I think that's just going to make a big mess for everybody. Nobody will be productive. But a lot of large companies already have that. It's just their internal networks or internal social media, if you will, that's business related.
That's right. Yeah,
Now,
think about, it's one thing, you're finding someone online to ask them a question, but what if you don't know who to ask? Right? One of the flaws of email is that if you have a question, you need to know who to ask.
Right.
Right? But what if there's someone in the Malaysian office in Kuala Lumpur who knows the answer at your company, but you don't know who that person is? So an enterprise social network allows you to do a couple of things. First, you can search people's profiles. I mean, assuming they're set up properly and all that. Search people's profiles for certain things they've declared I know about. And second of all, you could just post, like on Twitter, you can just post an open question. Does anybody know the answer to this? Right? And that message might be seen by the right person, or seen by the person who knows the right person and can mention them in the message and potentially get the answer. So that's where I think. Plus, that answer is now searchable by other people who might stumble upon it and find it. So there's a lot of potential for this. And if salespeople can shrink their time to their first sale by using a tool like this, especially in the onboarding process, what a value I think that is to companies. Right? If you can shrink that time, instead of taking 6 months to get your first deal, now you can do it in 4 or 5 months.
Yeah,
that's a big deal.
It is because those sales cycles, especially on big products, they're long. And look at even the average learning management system sale is probably about 6 months. Somewhere around there. It's somewhere around there. It could even be longer depending on how large the implementation is. That's a long time for the sales team to work with someone. It's a major investment in time, resources, and everything else. So, that could be the selling advantage sometimes, how quickly you can get back to a customer with information, valid information, not always easily found.
That's right. And, that's one of the things about my study is that, I'm not going to study a long sales cycle because it just wouldn't be doable for my dissertation. So my study will be on a much shorter sales cycle, probably a retail product of some kind, where it's 30-day sales cycle. Maybe it's 2 weeks, maybe it's 6 weeks. And so obviously that needs to be studied as well, because you always want to shrink that and improve that, of course. But the limitation of my study might be, well, you can't translate that to an enterprise sale if I'm selling SAP because it's not the same product, it's not the same client. And that may be true, but you got to start somewhere. And so that's sort of where I'm heading. I think you'll like the title of my dissertation. It starts, The Death of a Sales Trainer, a study of social learning in the workplace. So
there was a big shudder at ICE right now as you said that. That's all the
yes, they're all shaking in their boots.
Bill, it sounds like you're full of really good ideas. If somebody were to march in your office and as an investor and give you $1 million for your next big idea, what do you think you would use that on?
Only $1 million? That's all I get? Slightly off of this topic, I think there is a huge opportunity to sort of disrupt higher education. There's a flaw, right? Because you go to 4 years of college at the University of Oregon, for example, or Colorado Boulder, and you're spending between $5,000 and $15,000 per semester, in state or out of state, and you're taking a sociology class, right, for $8,000. And so a lot of these kids are going to come out of school with $150,000 in debt, and unless they studied accounting or engineering, they just got an education and don't necessarily know how to do a job after school. I think that, in other words, you're paying all this money to a school to learn stuff you can learn for free, right? If I want to take a history class, I'm spending $8,000 for the class, right? $500 or $1,000 per credit. It's a 4 credit course. I could read a book that I can get from the library, the same textbook. And so why are you paying for that? I think that if there's a 2-year school that could be built that only teaches the skill someone needs to get the job, to do a job, right? Now, that assumes, of course, that someone knows what they want to do when they're 18, which many don't. All right, so there's a problem to overcome. And two, all of these job descriptions in every company you can imagine says on their job description, bachelor degree, master's degree preferred. Right, so everyone says they want a full bachelor's degree. But if you could get CEOs to say, yes, if someone goes to this 2-year school, which is a lot cheaper and shorter, and they went through this program, I know they have the skills to do a job, I would hire that person. I mean, that's what Walt Disney did. He created a design school, in the 40s or 50s? Mm-hmm. It has become an accredited school that anybody can go to. But then he just created a place to teach kids how to draw so he could hire them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and they have a really high level, a high standard of education. And if you get through their design school, it's one of the best in the country.
Yeah,
maybe the world.
I mean, why would you go to a 4-year school to learn how to do software programming when you could just learn the software part for half the money and come out more prepared, perhaps? I mean, I just think that it's a cost and time problem that can be solved, right?
And it's gotten worse, without getting into politics. Ever since the government got involved in the student loan process, all of a sudden education is quadruple the cost it was from about 8 years ago.
That's right, because guess what? Someone else is paying. Mm-hmm. And the bank has no risk because they sell the loan to Sally Mae or whatever government agency buys the loan. So, you can get a loan without even... It's just like the mortgage crisis. People got a loan without proving income.
Right. And the universities are saying, oh, this is great. We get basically free money from the government. Right. The kids have to pay for it. Life's good.
That's right, and it's easy. And then the kid wakes up after graduating, $160,000 in debt, and he went to a state college.
I know. And it's funny. And it's funny. We call that indentured servitude.
That's right. Right, 2-year loan. That's exactly right.
2-year loan. I mean, you come out of school and now you are indentured to the government to get that loan paid off. And believe me, you don't get that paid off in a short. $100,000 to $200,000 is not easy to pay off. Ooh. And that used to be what only doctors had to pay. Now everybody's paying that.
Oh yeah, imagine what a doctor pays now.
I don't even want to know.
Yeah, so I just think that if I had a money to start a startup, I would probably tackle that. It's got to be a better way to do it. I mean, 13-year-olds are learning how to program computers using YouTube, and they make an app for 99 cents and they sell it. They don't need to go to college.
You bring up a good point.
Facebook will hire that guy, no problem.
Well, you bring up a good point. I don't know if you know Yuri Yuskov. He's the president of iSpring Solutions in Russia. Now, Yuri, aside from having the iSpring company, also teaches kids, I think from pretty early on all the way to teenagers, how to program. He's got an academy where he teaches programming, and now he's going to open that up to create kind of an academy and also university students for $3,000 a year. You can go to Russia, not only learn Russian, but can also learn how to program in all the major languages, from Pascal, which they use to teach basic logic, all the way up to Visual C++ for major systems development. But $3,000 a year compared to what they would pay here. And he said in 1 year or two, they're better programmers than anybody who's probably taken it for 8 years.
Yep.
Because it's totally focused on learning how to use programming skills for really learning how to be a good developer, learning how to solve business applications, learning how to create software. Now, juxtapose that with your typical computer science professional here, and believe me, I used to be in that industry where we hired people from with computer science backgrounds or business backgrounds with IT minors.
Sure.
It was sad how little they knew after 4 years.
Yeah.
They go to college, they couldn't program. Most of them could not program. How can you get a degree in computer science and not know how to program?
Yeah.
It's and I've sent letters to a lot of the schools. We've done a lot of interns, and I write a letter to the school and I say, you guys are a puppy mill. You should be closed down. And they don't respond, of course, but
of course not.
I literally tell them, you're a puppy mill. You don't do the kids or your school any service whatsoever.
Right.
And that's a shame. Right. It's just such a shame because, the kids are putting their trust into the system, into what they're trying to learn. And what do you get out of it? Now,
Right.
you brought up another good point, and if you go to Europe or almost every other country in the world except us, and maybe Canada, they have in high school 4 or 5 different tracks. You can go to a technical high school, an arts high school, a business high school, a shop kind of high school where you learn different trades.
Yep.
We got rid of all that.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
And it's a shame, because what happens to the kids who aren't really college mature? They don't want to go to college. They
Right.
want to be a car mechanic. Where do they
Right.
go? Now, it's in the old days they could go to high school, get their high school degree, and they were car mechanics
Right.
or they were carpenters. Now, what's wrong with that?
Nothing at all.
Yeah, and it's sort of a shame. Now, I hear all the politicians say, everybody has to go to college. And my question is, why?
Right.
There's nothing wrong with higher ed, but if it's not useful or functional, then why?
And that's part of the problem. There's this education inflation. Now, if everybody has a bachelor's degree, well, then everyone's the same. It's worth nothing.
Right.
But now everyone has to get a master's degree.
I know.
Right? Now, if
Which is-
everyone has a master's degree, guess what? That's worthless.
Yeah.
Because everybody has one.
Yeah.
Now we have to get, and so every job description, more and more, it's bachelor's degree required, master's preferred.
Mhm.
And, so you have to go to college. Even though you don't have to, you do. Because if you want a regular job, you can't get it, unless you meet the job requirements.
Right. Oh, and
So tough.
and by the way, in those countries we were just talking about, other than us, when you graduate high school, you have a bachelor's degree, and it is the equivalent of our bachelor's.
That's incredible.
So they already have. By the time they're out of high school, they've been forced to think a little bit about what they want to do when they grow up. And we don't grow up fast enough. In fact, they said that in the U.S. we tend to have prolonged adolescence, where until they're about mid to late 20s, they're still rather childish. And then they start focusing. I think I read somewhere by about 27, 28, the average American starts focusing a little bit on life. That's kind of late in the game sometimes.
I would think.
And partly because another person I read once said America suffers from affluenza. So the kids are a little too affluent, and therefore they don't have to work for it.
That's right.
And other countries don't have that affluenza, so they have to focus a little early on, and the kids are helping early on. So, it's like Gina Schreck always says, these are first world problems.
No kidding.
But and they're valid problems. And I love Lisa's question about the $1 million. That was really a good question. It's an interesting.
And I was thinking about Bill's $1 million question and flipped classrooms and self-education. Do you think, Bill, that it's possible that if there was kind of a flipped classroom model, if you were to type out on a blog someplace, here's everything that you need to go and research and learn, here's the resources, go read these things. And then you say something to the effect of, now meet back here in social media and we'll talk about it and we'll learn together in your, performance-based social media environment. Could those people come out just as educated as, someone who pursues a degree on a certain topic?
People can and people can't. I don't see it as all that much different. Because people go to a 4-year college and come out of it and didn't read their books and didn't pay attention in the lectures and got C's and don't even remember what they did sophomore year. So I think it can be done. But again, if you're home on your laptop all by yourself, it's a lot different than knowing that I have to be in class at 10 a.m. And so I'm sure more people go to class than would log into their computer to engage in the discussion about the video lecture they saw. So I think you have to be a pretty disciplined kid.
Kind of sounds like me with workout videos. I might not work out with my workout video, but if I go to class, they hold me accountable. So you're just talking about accountability.
Yeah, and so I would think that on the averages, you're going to have more people who paid attention in a college system than at home on a flipped system. But some kids could do that well. Just like some kids go to 4-year school and don't learn anything. You see those TV shows where they go out and interview kids from UC Berkeley, who's the vice president, and they don't know.
Yeah, they're terrible.
there's kids that go to good schools that just aren't paying attention, and they can get A's because the assignment says do this and they did that. That happens. But on the other hand, you sort of know anecdotally, if you've ever hired people or worked with people, the ones that went to college and graduate school are generally sharper and smarter than those who didn't, maybe. And that's not every kid. I mean, but you kind of anecdotally know that kids coming out of college are smart as a general matter. Not everyone, but so we're sort of stuck in that. That's what I think. That's what I would do with my $1 million. Solve that problem for less.
For less. Yeah. No, the other thing is when you start talking about the college system, look how popular schools like University of Phoenix are right now. They're online, and the semesters are gone, and they're doing, I think, 5-week classes, 5 weeks. Now, I remember going to school. That was a long time ago. We still had pterodactyls flying around, but these were long 20-week semesters. It was just excruciating. I hated it. Yeah. I was usually done with the materials by about 5 weeks. I'd go, can we just go home now? Like, this is boring. And to me, it was just excruciating. My daughter was the same way. She started out in regular school, Cal State system, and then she went to UOP, and all of a sudden she's doing really well, straight A's. In the regular system, it was C's, maybe. There's no interest, and the classes were so long by the time you were done, especially if you had a bad professor.
Sure.
Then it's just torture. I remember having a calculus class, and I had like one of the worst teachers put on earth. And everybody ran out of the class that first day, and I was sitting going, why are they all leaving? Oh, by the time I realized that all the other classes were full, I got stuck for the whole semester. I should have just dropped it. This guy was awful. 20 weeks of one of the worst teachers you could ever imagine. Learned nothing, got a D out of it. I went, oh, great, I had to retake it. And you just go, okay, was that worth it? No. And it was long. Imagine 5 weeks. 5 weeks sounds good. And also we assume people can't learn quickly.
Right.
I mean, I guess if you bore someone to death, they'll learn eventually, or they'll just get with it. I don't know. That's one of my biggest complaints is how long it takes. That's why I like e-learning a lot. You're at your own speed. You're fast, you can go fast.
Right.
If you're a little slower, you can go back and look at the pages. Well, I always laugh when customers say, the back button didn't work. Oh, right, back buttons. Who actually checks those? Because everybody I know is rushing through it real quickly. Nobody ever goes back. Then you remember, right, button? People do go back.
Yeah, I think that that's the same in corporate learning. It's very similar, right? So it's very easy to make a class too long, e-learning or in the classroom, because, Mark Twain, what did he say? I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. It's sort of like, it's easy to make it long. And pretty soon, and I've been guilty of this, where I've designed a training class and gone to the management team and says, okay, if you want this training, it's going to be 2 days. And they laughed me out of the room. So, okay, I'll figure out, I'll go back, and okay, we can do it in, a day or maybe 3/4 of a day. We'll do it, we'll spread it out, and So it's easy to make it too long, and people get bored, and you can't. I guess that's why this flipped model is attracting people, because you can give things to people in drips, right? Who has the attention span anymore? To sit there for 2 whole days. And what manager is going to let their team be away from their work for an extended period of time when they have deadlines to deliver for clients or whoever?
Right.
So, the timing, with any training we design, right, timing is, we as instructional designers, we want to spend all of our time making sure the instruction is right and in line with proper theory. And it should be 6 weeks. But the manager says, no, you got 6 hours. Yeah. I have a business to run. And so, we complain about that, of course. Well, that's the reality.
It's funny you bring that up, because when we do interns, if I'm usually the one who works with the interns, because one, I enjoy it. They're fun. It's fun to work with the young kids.
Yeah.
And 2, they don't have an easy job. It's not an easy internship. We immediately challenge them. Because the whole goal is, no, you're in a comfort zone. Let's get you out of your comfort zone so you actually learn something.
Yeah.
And we, for example, we have one right now. He's wrapping up, and the first thing we gave him was something he'd never done. I go, how well do you know PowerPoint? He goes, I've done PowerPoint. Good. Now you're really going to do PowerPoint. and we gave him a really hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And in 2 weeks, he goes, wow, I learned more about this than I have in the last 6 months at school. Because all of a sudden we threw PowerPoint, video, sound, audio editing, everything in one fell swoop. He hadn't done almost any. He was a graphic artist.
Right.
Now he's starting to contemplate if he doesn't want to go into multimedia major where he can do all of it.
Right. That's cool.
He never thought of it.
That's right.
And
I think that's where hopefully my research will come in with salespeople, is that yes, the company is going to have their formal training up front for the new hire salespeople. Mm-hmm. Here's our products, here's our client, here's our sales process. You need to learn that. But if they can get into this environment, this social learning environment, I'll just call it that, where they can now talk to each other, start their work, first of all, right? Because you can't learn everything before you start working. At some point, you got to get them out of there and get them into the field and start working. But they're going to forget things. They didn't learn everything. So now what do? I have a client on the phone. I don't know how to answer their question. I'll call them back. And now I go into this enterprise social network and talk to my peers and look up that checklist or that matrix they presented to us in class because it's been posted in the group. And I can, I see, I remember now. I'm going to call them back and try this, right? You're now forcing yourself through experience and through doing it and through interacting with people. It's a similar kind of thing that your intern went through, I think, right? You got to throw people to the fire at some point.
Yeah, and they learn. Also, in sales, there's another thing. Salespeople know about their products, but unless they know about their customer's business, they're never going to sell. Because they've got to sell a solution. And I've done some sales training in the past, and one of the things, the first thing I do is say, as a sales rep, you need to become a journalist. And they look at you like, huh? I said, you've got to ask who, what, when, where, why, and how.
Yep.
How is your product going to fit? When will it be used? Why do you need it? How will someone take advantage of it? What are the possibilities? Ask the questions, who, what, when, where, why, and how. Yep. And all of a sudden, sales changes from just knowing your product to knowing how that product will fit in that company's
That's right.
Structure. Well, have you guys ever gone to like a Best Buy or a Fry's Electronics or any of those?
Sure.
And you want to go buy a TV, and there's about 20 or 30 up, and you go, which one should I buy? And that they're tweaking the ones that they want to sell because they make those look a little brighter, a little better because they want to move those. But how many times have you gone and somebody there actually knows something about the actual TVs?
Yeah.
Not that often, right?
No.
And yet every so often you go to a store and you come across somebody who knows everything about all of those TVs, or immediately gets on the computer and tells you things you need to know and why that TV will be better in your home.
Right.
Oh, I went to one guy and he actually said, do you have a bright room or is it a darker room? I almost fell over. It's like, wow. That's actually a crucial question. Nobody asks it. If you buy a TV that's, let's say, a plasma TV and you're in a bright room, you won't be able to see it. You're going to need curtains or shutters or something to make it dark. So people buy the plasma because it's cheaper and they go, wow, look, I got a plasma TV, and then they're cursing because they can't see it.
Yep.
And that could have been allayed by just one quick question by a sales rep.
Got to know your customer.
Got to know the customer. And so, the training and research you're doing, I think, is going to be very valuable because we definitely need to know, and especially with, like you said, with social learning, all learning is social to a certain point.
Sure.
How do you apply it?
How do you apply it, right? I'm really, if you get down to what I'm doing, I am just testing a social theory of learning, right? So Etienne Wenger, the guy that sort of came up with the community as a practice or made it popular, I mean, his theory on social learning, he's just saying, this is how people learn, right? So I'm really taking his 4 things and I'm going to test it, right? And I'm going to write my report to see, okay, these people reported to me that this is how they learned their sales job, and I'm going to match it up with what the theory says, and say, well, did it work? I mean, that's what I'm doing, right? And then, of course, seeing did sales results go up.
Yep, that sounds really good.
I'll test it. Maybe it's wrong. Maybe it doesn't work. Maybe I'll report in my finding that social learning doesn't work. This is not how they learn according to this particular theory.
Right.
This is actually how they learn, and maybe it'll be the Bill Cushard theory of everything.
That sounds good.
Bill, where are you learning best in social media?
Where am I learning best?
Which tools do you like to use? Where your go-to learning, your personal learning network? Where do you go?
I'm mostly Twitter and LinkedIn, probably 90%. So talking to people. When I wasn't so busy, I was a regular on LearnChat and T-Chat too. I haven't done those in a long time. I've just been busy at those particular times of the day recently. And LinkedIn groups, I'm in the usual ones all of us are in. And so those are my go-to, aside from just reading books and articles and those kinds of things. And quite frankly, since I've been writing more, I write for my own blog, but for 3 other blogs. And I'll tell you what, just like trainers, when you teach something, you really learn it. Gosh, if you have to write about something every week, you really learn it because you're forcing yourself to read up on it. And quite frankly, 20 or 30% of the time when I'm writing a blog post on a topic, I will post a question in a LinkedIn group or on Twitter to get ideas. And that's a lot where I come from. People send a link or people just tell me what they did, and I turn that into a 500-word piece.
That's pretty good.
I learn a ton because you sort of have to stay up on things. And, in good writing, if I do it right, I sort of state a problem, and then I go out and find articles that talk about how that problem can be solved, and I write about that, And that's what I try to do. But that's how I learn a ton, reading blogs and then writing about them.
I've seen a lot of blogs where people will tweet out about that blog, and then a conversation happens out on Twitter, or the conversation happens out on G+, and then you kind of lose that group. It's dispersed, and we're not having a centralized conversation. And I saw Tom Spiglanen found this really neat technology that he added to the bottom of his blog, so that when the conversation went out to Google Plus or other places, that all that conversation stream was brought right back to the bottom of his blog. I thought that was genius.
What's he using?
I don't know the name of it.
That sounds cool.
But I'm sure there's got to be a logo on the technology at the bottom of his blog.
Is it Discuss? DISQ?
I don't know, but is that another tool that you know of that does that type of thing?
I think so. It's a comments. Now you can insert that. It's a commenting, plug-in for blogs, but it's also linked to social networks. And so I don't know how it works exactly, except for commenting on the blog, and then you can share it out to the social network. I'm not so sure it brings it in from a conversation on a social network that didn't come through the Discuss. So that's a good, I don't know.
And then not to switch subjects very quickly, but our chat room's actually filling up with tons of questions. I don't know if we have time for them, but Lily wants to know.
We can probably give it about 3 more minutes because we're getting close to 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Okay.
Should we throw one?
Let's do some questions, sure.
Okay, so Lily's asking, what is your interpretation of a flipped classroom, since it's not always the same, depending on who you ask?
That's a good question, actually. I think the standard response would be that you do the lecture on your own and then come into the class and do the activity, the discussion, the practical thing, and talk about what you learned and how you can apply it. I think that's sort of the standard. I mean, if you think about what Khan Academy does and how teachers are using that, that's kind of what flipping it is, right? You go watch the video on how to do that algorithm, right? And then we'll come in and do some practice problems together. I'm not going to lecture you and show you how to do it. That's a waste of time. Watch the video, and we'll come in and we'll do problems. I think that's what most people think of when they think of a flipped classroom. Mm-hmm. But that's just what I think.
Do we have more questions?
And who wants to listen to that old professor yammer on about 13th century Eastern European history when you could just watch the YouTube video?
Exactly.
That's true.
I take that back. It's all the questions were around the flipped classroom, so it looks like you've covered it. It's a lot of conversation happening, but it's
sort of a hot topic. People are sort of, whether people are actually applying it or not is a whole other thing. But
well, look how many teachers don't even teach. They have, TAs do all the teaching.
That's right.
So the professor's not exactly the one imparting knowledge.
That was the old-fashioned flipped classroom. Send the TA in there.
Right, right. And the professor got a lot of money for hanging around and doing research or whatever else, but not teaching. So it's sort of interesting. Well, Lisa is writing the check right now for the $1 million, and that should be in FedEx to you very shortly. Or I think she might actually be telexing. What is it?
Lisa, you could just send me a PayPal.
Yeah, exactly. There we go.
What's a check?
Yeah.
Bill, it's always a pleasure. Good luck. Oh, and by the way, where can people get a hold of you? And are you going to be talking or anywhere in the near future?
No, I'm locked up in my cave writing my dissertation. But I might be at the Mobile Learning Conference, eLearnCon in June. I might be in California that very week, and if I do, I might go in there. But
well, I'm definitely going to be there. I think, Lisa, you're going to be there, right?
I'm going to be there. And by the way, day one is June 18th in San Jose, and June 18th is my birthday. So that means, Bill, you owe me a birthday drink.
Uh-oh.
I think I might be there the 18th.
Yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be working at the show, so that'll be fun. Look forward to seeing you guys.
Just go to my Twitter handle. That's how you can find me. Bill Cush.
And I pasted, in the chat room, I pasted Bill's link to Twitter.
Yeah. And if you notice, it's Bill Cush, not Bill Cushard, because Bill Cush means he's comfy. He's a comfy kind of guy.
Yeah. This is Cush.
Hey, you guys are great. Well, thank you so much for both being here, and we wish you the best, Bill. And I'm looking forward to seeing both of you guys at eLearn. That'll be a lot of fun in San Jose.
Absolutely. Awesome. That'll be fun.
And awesome. Great to be here. I love it.
And have a great one, everyone. And if you're in the chat room, remember to come back next week. We look forward to seeing you. Next week, we have the very famous Patty Shank back on.
Awesome. So and another person who lives really close to us, Bill.
Yeah.
Denver's taking over the world.
They are.
We are.
Pretty good.
It's a great place to be.
So Patty will be on next week, and if you watch the recordings, please subscribe and give us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Bye.